Good morning. I decided I would do a video today. I didn't really want to, but I think it's important that we cover some of these things so that you can hear the other side of what ICAC never tells you. So I'm going to show you two stories. First of all, giving credit where credit is due. I want to give credit to Michael and also to Mark out west and push them out so that people could be aware not only how to protect kids, which is in our mutual interest, but also to understand exactly what ICAC does not want you to know, which is the other side of the story. You have to wonder over and over again, if you're a fair-minded person, why it is that the same patterns keep showing up over and over again. That's whether we're talking about the patterns that the police come up with, where they're talking about the patterns of predation, or the ones that we have been talking about over and over again, where you have people all over the country. Many of us have never met one another, and yet when we talk on the phone or we talk, through this kind of a medium, through an electronic medium with each other, what we're finding out is that the very same sorts of tactics that are dirty, that are vicious, that are not above board are being used against us. But ICAC never talks about that. They never bring up that. So the purpose that I have here is to bring up these tactics so you can actually see what it is that we see. And I want to start out, first of all, with Anderson, South Carolina. And this is something that I think it was Michael brought up. You have this other article here that I'm going to spend more time on than the first article. Let me pull that up here. I want to make sure it comes up. And this is the Operation Hightower. You can see it on the screen here. And I'm going to cover a couple of things. Let me introduce some people. This is the local sheriff here of Anderson County, and this is the ICAC operative commander, sergeant, somebody. It's not even all that important necessarily, but I'm going to put in here a couple of things so you have an idea of what it is ICAC says, and what we have learned is amounting to coded language that they never really tell us. So let me start this video so you can hear it a little bit, and I'm going to stop it at various points along the way to make comments about it. We're not going to listen to the whole video, but I want you to hear what we hear and what the public never ever actually hears. So let me start this out.
All right, good morning. Thank you for everybody being here. Our media partners, thank y'all for being here this morning.
I want to stop it right there. Media partners, okay? Already you co-opt the media on your side. The media is not supposed to be on the police's side. The media, as a former member of the media, is supposed to be on the side of what's the truth. But the media here, apparently in South Carolina, has co-opted itself. And you have to understand, folks, if you're working out of a bureau there and you're surrounded by, so-called Christian conservatives and others there. And again, I'm not bashing anybody in particular. I know what it's like to live in a rural area. I know what they're up against. When you're media in that area, you are asked all the time to cover, anything from the flower show to whatever. And you are viewed as sort of the public voice for the quote, good people. Okay. But that's not really your job. Your job is to explain what's actually going on. Okay. So I love how they immediately give the game away by saying, you're our media. Okay. We're going to use you as a one-way mirror flashing out what we want. And we're not expecting you to say anything other than what we want you to say. Media partners, you got to love it.
we wanted to have a press conference to outline a recent operation that took place that our folks and some other partnering agencies assist us with. It was an undercover operation called Operation Hightower. Resulted in 11 confirmed arrests and about 15 warrants issued. Suspects that were
All right, Operation Hightower, they will later say, comes from Psalm 144, 1 through 2, which they're happy to quote, and they have it up on a sign, I think, there too. Again, we're the good guys. We are God's chosen out here, fighting the good fight. But again, they don't tell you everything. You will see here at 2:54 in a minute.
Captured in this operation, traveled to a location that our detectives were working undercover in, believing that they were coming to have sex with a child.
Okay, so this is the standard thing. We're on there. We found out that there were people who were going to travel to have sex with children. That's what they were doing, and we apprehended them. Again, we hear this all the time, right? We hear this all the time. And, again, I'm not suggesting that you don't believe that people were trying to have sex with children. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not always what you think it is. Okay, you can look right over here on this side and see an article, 20 cops charged as escorts for drug cartels, right? So, I mean, the idea that because you have a badge, somehow you are one of the good guys. Oh, well, let's just think again. All I'm asking you to do is use critical thinking skills and look at some of these cases. Let's go do here's the group of people that they love to flash up there, right? Some are older, some are younger, and let's go to around 2:54. I don't want to spend all this time here, um, but you want to make sure that you are seeing the entire thing, okay?
I'm Sergeant Smith with Anderson County Sheriff's Office, and I'm the supervisor of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task
This is the ICAC supervisor.
ICAC is part of a worldwide network dedicated to protecting our most vulnerable children and our citizens. In South Carolina, investigations are conducted locally, and prosecutions are handled by the South Carolina Attorney General's Office.
This is very common in a lot of places. The reason that they do this, and they've tried to get a law in Virginia to have the AG be in charge of all the sex cases, is that they want to make sure that no local prosecutor is going to be, soft on this. They want to make sure that, and they have more resources too. All right. The more you keep it at the local level, the more likely there are other things going on there. In Virginia, it's very curious though because in the last administration, as I pointed out, Republicans were in charge, and they just hammered the counties that have Democratic prosecution units in there, and yet we're completely blind to the greater cases of more and most egregious exploitation in the Republican-led counties, right? So this is the little game that you're not aware of. You probably just let that pass without understanding what they're really saying here.
Our mission is clear: to combat growing and relentless threats of our online enticement of the children that are sexually exploited and the production and distribution of child sexual abuse material.
It's interesting. I didn't I skipped through a part because I don't want this to be super long. But they keep talking about the number of people they arrested. They keep talking about how their goal is to protect kids, but they never talk about how many kids they rescued. They say they rescued kids, but we never get to see how many kids they actually rescued. The numbers are very, very small because they use decoys, and what we know about the decoys that they deploy is that, of course, they're not real children, but they also do all sorts of things to engage people. This starts out by saying that they do a number of proactive and reactive stings. Okay, but he actually starts out saying reactive and then proactive. I didn't show that. That's around 2:54, and it's the first guy, the sheriff. Reactive and proactive. In other words, reactive is we have real children in danger, and then the rest of what they talk about is proactive. So they want you to believe that most of what they do is a real child in danger, but that's not true. If you really listen to what they're saying, most of it involves them hanging out on chat rooms, waiting for something to happen as they claim, but they don't just sit there and wait. They create an environment. Why are you going on these platforms and engaging men. Now, they will go on to tell you that the men engage them, but over and over again, we find that it's quite different. They engage people who are standing there minding their own business. And why are you trying to entice men to commit a crime to begin with? Let's listen further.
We conduct reactive and proactive
There
investigations.
you go. He says it right there. Reactive and proactive, mostly proactive by, seven out of every 10 or more.
Including undercover operations, and work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to identify unknown victims and rescue children from abuse.
Most of the calls into that center, very, very few are actually investigated because they only have so much time. But the ones that they do investigate, very, very few involve children being exploited in this kind of environment.
Our cases involve social media platforms, file sharing networks, messaging applications, and new digital landscapes where predators attempt to hide.
Later on, they will tell you, certainly in the Arizona one, mostly they go through direct contact through chats and not these other ways he's claiming.
Beyond enforcement, ICAC investigators are committed to prevention. We educate parents, students, churches, and communities about online safety because the reality is, every single day, children are exploited by dangerous individuals hiding behind screens. Children in our homes, children in our schools, children in our communities, lives that can be changed forever in a moment. As a proactive measure to combat the increasing number of online offenders, our unit, standing next to me, we initiated an undercover chat operation designed to identify individuals who demonstrate a clear intent to exploit children.
So they initiate this, they claim, and no, that's not the same as contacting people directly, but they initiate this operation of people who may want to exploit people. Now, children. Now, what we don't know is what they do. What do you do to interface with these people?
The purpose of this operation was simple: to find those who actively seek out minors online for sexual exploitation and to prevent them from reaching a real child.
Okay, so actively engage in doing that. So they're actively engaging in that. They're looking for people who are going to actively engage.
This operation was named Operation Hightower, inspired by Psalm 144. To the men and women of our investigation unit, they defend themselves. In December of 2020,
Okay, so they're going to uncover individuals with a clear intent to harm kids. I assume then you're not going to be talking to them first because you want them to have an opportunity to say what they're interested in. How else would you know, unless you're a mind reader, what these people are going to be doing online?
over the course of 4 consecutive days, local, state, and federal law enforcement partners joined us here in Anderson to conduct this coordinated law enforcement effort. Undercover officers posed as online underage children. Within moments, suspects began initiating contact.
Within moments, they began initiating contact. So let's look at some of the contact that they initiated.
As a result of this operation, over 11 suspects have been arrested, and more are awaiting their arrest. More than 40 criminal charges have been secured.
All right, so we hear about all the benefits. Okay, this is what we did. We did the Lord's work, and then we created these situations where we got these guys. Nothing about what they do, but what's really curious is if you go all the way down here to, let's see, let's go to about here, where the sheriff is talking, they're going to show you some chats. Now, we have a number of these chats, and they look very similar to this, but what we also know is that very frequently they will cut out what makes the police look bad, what shows what they really do. And then they repackage it here. It's very simple. They simply cut out the chats, okay? And they'll show you what they want to show you. Very simple to do that, okay? You know you can do that on your phone too. The only way you can tell if something's been cut out is if you get a hold of it and have a forensic analysis of the device and you can see what happens. But if the police aren't going to show you that, how would you know what absolutely is there? And you want to believe what the police are telling you. Me too. But I know better now that it's been done to me. And so many people, as I said, within Citizens Against Government Entrapment, all over the country, many of us have never met one another face to face, and yet we have similar stories. As we've shared stories, we've discovered, much to our amazement, that what police are doing is creating these crimes. What they're doing is they are faking what they're claiming happens. They're claiming that they are being approached by people. Very often they do the approaching. Very often they are the ones dangling a child. Why are you even dangling a child? And when a person says that they're not interested, they continue to go after the person. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just say, you're interested in 13-year-old? No, I definitely do not want anything to do with that. Okay, and then walk away. Why don't they do that? Because they want to rack up statistics. You know, it's a game for them. They not only get money, but they get street cred, as we saw in the video I did about the young guy who's in charge of the small New Mexico operation. They want street cred. They want to look good. They want to look good, and they want to see how that really works for them out there. So let's look at a couple of these here. He's going to show the chats in a minute.
Have to do a better job of monitoring what our children and our teenagers are subject to on their phones, laptops, and iPads, all those electronic devices. It can take seconds for a predator to engage with them. So, just to give you an example, because this blew me away of how fast this can happen. So, uh, Sergeant Smith and
Now, by the way, this doesn't show how fast anything can happen. This is showing the chats that they want you to see. And again, I'm not saying that this is not true. I'm not saying that people don't go after children. We know they do, but we also know cops lie too. We know that people who have been captured, who have been convicted, people like me, we know that those people lie too. But don't for a moment pretend that because you have a badge, you don't lie. Remember, look at this guy down here, right? This guy has a badge. The sheriff's every time I look at it, 20 cops arrested for being charged as escorts. So they're escorting drugs into the United States because they get paid nicely. They have badges too, and they lie as well. So don't be fooled necessarily by this. Just because you have police officers showing you these chats, it says, "Hello, would you be interested in an older man? I don't know, I'm young. Really, would you be interested in an older man?" Well, we don't know what happened before that. We have no idea. We don't know if this was cut from another one. We just don't know. Okay? Lieutenant something discreet, who knows? I don't know. I'm guessing what it may say here. I'm young. I'm okay with it. I bet you look amazing and very beautiful. I'm only 14. Okay? Is that okay? Okay. Sarah is a beautiful name. I don't remember Sarah showing up in here, right? Yes. What do you look like? Okay. Well, we don't know if this is the real authentic chat or not. We have no idea about that. We simply have no clue about it. And I think it's very, very important for people to understand the other side of it. Okay? That what is happening here is not necessarily what everybody thinks is happening. And it would be nice if police would bring their chats and bring their methods to the city council and do like they do, honestly, with when they set up DUI checkpoints. They say, hey, we're going to have a DUI checkpoint. Why don't they say, hey, we're going to be hanging out on these adult sites? Because they don't identify which sites they're on here, you'll notice on here. They give general ideas of the types of things ICAC does, but they don't exactly say where they are. So we don't really know. Early on, they say that they hung out in chat rooms. Okay. Um, what chat rooms? We do know, anecdotally, from some people that police develop chat rooms through Kick, for example, and then they hang out there and they invite people in who they think might do something, and then work to convince them to be to going after a child. Okay, when they have indicated no interest in doing that. So why are you going to this virtue testing where you're asking people if they'd be interested in being with a child and then encouraging them to do that and then going, gotcha. Why are you doing that? We see as I switch over to something in Arizona, 173 people arrested in human trafficking sting, right? So you should see how they're rather unclear what is actually going on here.
That led to more than 170 arrests in Scottsdale.
Police say the 3-week operation helped them rescue many trafficking victims or survivors, including one child. Stephen Sarabi is here in the studio to explain what happens from here, Stephen.
Yeah, well, the big goal right now is helping those victims like that child that you mentioned, and trying to help them get the resources they need, like counseling. Now, advocates against human trafficking tell me that it's very important that these traffickers are held accountable, as this is an issue that is very likely happening across the whole valley. 173 arrests in the span of 3 weeks, all related to some form of human trafficking in Scottsdale.
This was a extremely successful endeavor for us.
The arrests range from child sex trafficking, prostitution-related offenses, and luring a minor for sexual exploitation. 40 of the arrests were felony charges. This was done for felony charges. This was related offenses and lure.
All right, so let's look at this for a moment here. Child sex trafficking. We have
sex buyer.
we have all sorts of issues involved in here. Outstanding warrants, narcotics, misconduct. We don't know to what extent. Let me go back to this one right here. We don't know to what extent, which part is child sex trafficking, which one is attempted luring, which one is prostitution related, and are these underage prostitutes transporting for the purpose of prostitution? We don't know to what extent they are what they are claiming to be. Okay, we don't have any idea because of the simple fact that you've got so many things mixed in here. Which is which?
And luring a minor for sexual exploitation. 40 of the arrests were felony charges. This was done as a sting targeting sex buyers. Lieutenant Peter Michael says they went undercover to catch some of these people.
Now listen to this, what he says about the undercover operation, okay? So that you get a sense of what ICAC does. And again, we've invited ICAC a number of times to share what it is they do so that we can all be part of the proactive action, and they steadfastly refuse. As I said, I'm still waiting for the local ICAC group here in my own county to come clean on their statistics of how many children they saved. They won't do it. Why not? Why not? You know, if it were lots of children, they'd be crowing from the rooftops. Crowing from the rooftops. Listen to this.
Of detectives that portray themselves as a 13 or 14-year-old persona. We don't actually use juvenile victims. This is all digital. It's through text messaging.
Scottsdale.
All right, so it's digital through text messaging. In other words, they approach you through the text messages, or they make geomorphs, and they want you to know that there are no actual children. So why is it that they go through and say that they rescued all these children, they did all these other things, when, very often there's no children at risk? So that suggests that they do a proactive operation more than a reactive operation, at least in Scottsdale. And in a proactive operation, they're the ones who are very often going after you. They're not investigating a crime in progress. They're not investigating children that are in danger. Nothing like that at all. And they're portraying themselves as less than 15, as you can see down here, because that's where they can rack up much higher charges. And in Arizona, registry for life, if I remember correctly.
Police does this operation every year. For 2025, they arrested 202 people. The mayor making it clear that traffickers have no place in their city.
If you attempt to prey on the vulnerable here in our city, you will not succeed.
And you will be caught.
Okay, well, what about all those people who the Trump administration lost 1,000 children through their reckless child endangerment, breaking up families when they closed the border? What about those children? Have you found those? Because that's a real problem too. And trafficking is certainly a problem. But that's unclear in this article. We don't know really what's going on because they throw all those other things out there. So they're conflating what they're doing with a proactive sting with human trafficking, with prostitution, human underage and of age, so to speak, prostitution, and much more. It's very confusing to the public as to what's actually going on.
One, it tells people who are coming to town or our locals, do not buy sex here.
When it comes to stopping any form of trafficking,
Does that look like a child to you? Doesn't look like a child to me.
advocates say it's important people report it when they see it happening.
You can also talk to your
None of those look like children to me.
family about trafficking, talk to your kids about it, watch who they're talking to on the phone, on gaming systems, making sure.
So they're talking about child trafficking, but their media partners here are not doing anything to do with child trafficking. They're talking about simple solicitation and prostitution.
that your kids know what trafficking is.
While this operation happened around the time of the WM Open, Scottsdale Police says that was just a coincidence. Now, for how to report trafficking as well.
Okay, so now they're going to show you how to report trafficking, right? So how do you make sense of this kind of a news report where they conflate all this stuff together? All right. We don't know exactly what that's about. We are forced to rely on what the police tell us. And what the police tell us oftentimes is simply not what actually is happening. So that gives you another perspective on the entirety. So this is ICAC Unpacked. Have a good day.